Tensions boil over as India and Canada expel each other's diplomats. Ottawa says it has credible data linking India to the killing of a Sikh activist who was also a Canadian citizen. New Delhi calls the allegation absurd.
For more on the growing dispute between India and Canada, we're joined now by Swaran Singh. He's professor at the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. Professor Swaran, thank you for joining us. Now, these allegations, they no doubt they pose a challenge for Indo-Canadian ties. They relate in no small way to India's diaspora in Canada. It is a large one. And also to India's domestic politics. How striking to you is Mr. Trudeau's accusation of this supposed credible link between the killing of Mr. Hardeep Singh? And what does it say to you about the state of India-Canada ties?
First of all, thank you for having me on your program. It does appear striking to me, particularly because Canadian Prime Minister just very recently in G20 summit meeting in New Delhi had one-to-one discussion with Indian Prime Minister, and then going back and publicizing what are so far called accusations and allegations without absolutely no proof of India's connection, look to me more driven by domestic politics rather than relations with India. In any case, relations with India are just very minimal in terms of very limited trade and investments. The both sides were trying to sign a free trade agreement, which has been in suspended animation for a long time. So in that sense, since Canada had last November issued their Indo-Pacific strategy, calling India their most critical partner in the Indo-Pacific, that had sort of created an imagination of India trying to sort of be a country where Canada would like to expand and increase relationships. But now it seems out of blue, this sort of publicizing of these what are fundamentally allegations has taken most people in India, I think, by surprise. Nobody was expecting this to be happening, particularly after one-to-one talk between two prime ministers, and I'm sure they must have discussed how to resolve that problem.
Well, it's been of concern to other countries as well, Professor Swaran. I mean, hearing the Canadian Prime Minister talk about this potential link between what is a murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil by a foreign government is raising eyebrows, but it's also brought to light this long-standing issue of some groups demanding a separate homeland for Sikhs, the so-called Khalistan movement. How thorny of a problem is that movement for the India government, though?
If you look at the situation inside India, which is where some of these people want to create a new homeland, situation inside India is perfectly peaceful. And the region where they claim that they want to have that separate homeland has had elections one after another, have been electing governments one after another of different political parties, and that is not seeing any such groundswell at home here. And these are some of these, groups that are still active in foreign land. And in that sense, I think if you follow the fact that today we respect the sanctity of territoriality of every sovereign country, no nation should extend freedom of expression to the level when it becomes like of castigating on the integrity of another country. And second, very quickly, I think it's not the only example of domestic violence. North America has seen increase of gun violence over a period of time. And even among the community that we are talking in Canada, this is not the first example. There are increasing number of attacks on people of one group to the other. And I think particularly when there are absolutely no investigations proving any firm results, and only publicizing accusations and allegations at this stage looks to me, primarily driven by domestic politics, where you have NDP as an important partner in the government in power in Canada right now. And certain interested groups would like to keep this flame alive, even if it has become virtually of no good anymore. If you look at situation in India, there is absolutely no visibility of any such sentiment at home here. Some people abroad are trying to do that. I think that's their problem, but I understand it is a domestic problem much more in Canada than
Professor Swaran, you mentioned earlier that the Canadian Prime Minister had met with Narendra Modi at the G20 meeting. We do know that he raised this issue with the Indian Prime Minister there at that time. There is a diplomatic fine line for how Ottawa sort of behaves in a way, because New Delhi has also urged Canada to take legal action against anti-Indian elements that are operating from its soil, what they call anti-Indian elements, and they've branded the Khalistan movement a sort of terror sort of movement as well, and banned it in a sense. Canada is a home to a very large Indian diaspora. There are many Sikhs also calling it home. How does Ottawa actually tread that sort of line carefully with an issue that at its core is a domestic issue for India?
I think, first of all, thank you to you for mentioning that India has also expressed concerns in what is happening in Canada in name of freedom. But India didn't choose to, sort of go and make a publicity out of such allegations or claims or assertions that India has made, or did not go out and dismiss any of the Canadian diplomats in Delhi to assert that kind of popular campaign in that direction. Indeed, India's concerns about what is happening in Canada are not new, whereas this murder is a very recent event. India's concerns about how freedom of expression has been used by a particular community in at least two major cities of Canada have been there for a long period of time, but I'm sure India has sought to use largely back-channel diplomacy or closed-door meetings on these issues. And India doesn't feel any sense because of, apparently India doesn't have any domestic compulsions to, voice things against Canada.
Professor Swaran, I want to thank you for your analysis this evening. As Professor Swaran Singh there from the Jawaharlal Nehru University.